nagmamatsyag, hindi natitinag sa bawat hamon ng mundo. Katotohanan ang aking armas, di ako magpapatalo. Teacher Mark reacts, galit sa kasinungalingan. Sa bawat salita, bumubulusok ang katotohanan. Walang palusot, walang takas sa mali. Ako'y rebel.
Yon, welcome back sa Teacher Mark Reacts. And ang pag-uusapan natin, ito, the sit down with Kiko Barzaga. So, bibigyan natin ng reaction to. And sabi nga ni the Alpha, sinampal-sampal si Yuzik eh. So, yun. Shoutout sa iyo mga Revic Enriquez, and pakiusap ko lang sa inyo guys, please like, share, and subscribe yung mga videos natin. Kasi so far naka-shadow ban tayo. No? Mababa yung mga, may mga nakasubscribe na hindi nakikita yung mga videos natin. Oo. Hindi nagdo-notify sa kanila kung may live na tayo or may pinost tayong video. Alam nyo na kung bakit. So, yan. If you could share this video or like, subscribe, then that would be greatly appreciated. No? Jenaline Danting, shoutout sa iyo, and Adrian Somalde. So without further ado, let's do this.
This is new to you, but I'm sure when you were younger, you knew about the corruption that's plagued the Philippines. So how come you're very outspoken now? Where is this coming from?
Well, firstly, not just me when I was younger, practically everyone, even the children, knows how corrupt our government is. It's practically the cause of all of our country's problems right now, and even before then. So the rampant corruption within our country isn't something that you're outspoken if you speak out against. It's something that everyone already readily accepts, and something that we have an opportunity to change. So that
Hindi lang naman ako yung tinatrabaho actually. Si Atty. Libayan at si P.A.K.U rin.
that's where it's coming from. It's something that can be changed and something that I'm willing to change.
Okay, so when you entered politics, when you started being councilor, then you ran for Congress, you intentionally ran knowing that someday you would be speaking out? Or was there an issue in government recently that made you bolder or made you think, okay, this is the issue this is too much. This is the reason I'm going to speak out?
Well, it's always been too much, but you also have to be strategic about when you speak out and how likely you are to actually get good results. So at that point, and at this point, I reached a moment where I believe that we have a good chance of beating corruption or beating the specific corruption that I am targeting.
Why do you feel like we have a good chance of beating corruption now? What has changed? What's different now than before?
It's a larger issue and information is more.
It is true. Si Gadon, nagkaroon siya ng honorifics as admiral. Oo. I think last month, binigyan siya ng honorifics.
Readily available to the people. We are more able to affect how the government is perceived and also how politicians are perceived compared to before, when the media is mostly controlled by the companies that are sponsoring them and the companies that own them. So right now, with the emergence of social media and the internet, everyone's capable of being their own form of media and
so it's a game
reflecting
changer,
upon
social media.
Yes,
That's the reason
very.
why you feel more emboldened.
Not just social media, just the advancement of technology in general.
But Kong, for sure, before all of this, before there were reasons, like the reason why you ran for political position, first for the position in Dasmariñas City Council. What was the reason you ran for?
For City Council, during my first run in 2019, well, I needed a job. And that was the one that's most readily available and one that I had most experience in.
That
Napaka-short nung sagot, no? Bakit ka tumakbo? Kailangan trabaho. Tsaka yun yung alam ko eh.
Was the only job available that time for you before, sir?
I mean, there were plenty of other jobs available, but that's
you were
the
still a student then, di ba?
closest one.
You were still a student.
By that time when I became counselor in 2019, I was no longer a student. I became a student in 2020 again in 2022 after pandemic.
Can you provide, sir, like as your background before? Kasi, di ba, usually, is it because you were from a political family, that's why ang immediate na nasa isip nyo is ang readily available na job is in a government seat? Hindi po ba like either business or like an employee of a business, but politics agad, sir?
I mean, that's possible, but as part of a political family, I'm going to end up in politics anyway, so might as well just take the fastest route available.
But was there a reason why politics, corruption before, or like yung mga social issues, may nag-prompt po ba sa inyo why politics agad?
Well, that time I only ran for counselor, so I did not have the capability of removing nationwide corruption. Only citywide, though there were not many problems in Dasma during that time.
That time. But sir, what was the reason you ran for a higher post, like, this time congressional post?
The post became available, but it was originally available during the time because the original plan was for Kong PD to retire by 2025 and for me to take the congressional spot, the district representative spot for our city.
So you were saying na because a government post was the available during your first run for the Dasmariñas City Council and for the congressional post, that's why you chose it, sir?
Yes.
At saka, magre-retire, kung hindi nangyari yun sa tatay niya, no? Eventually, tatakbo rin naman siya. Di ba? Yun naman yung takbo noon. Whether he like it or not, ganun pa rin.
Sir, when you say that you've always known that you'd end up in politics, this was something discussed to you when you were young. How are you so sure that you're going to end up in politics? Was this something that your parents told you when you were young that you should be in politics?
Not necessarily. It's more of a tendency. If you can see that all the other children of politicians are becoming politicians themselves, then you can also expect the same tendency to apply to you. It's a matter of statistics. If it's common for the descendants of politicians to become politicians, then it's also likely to happen to you.
But personally, you had no other aspirations.
Well,
Aspirations that were separate from politics.
there were no other aspirations that I couldn't have gotten while being a politician. Like I wanted to be an athlete. I also wanted to study science. I wanted to do business, plenty of things. But I could do all of that while in politics, as I'm doing now.
Okay. So, you were saying that you weren't studying when you decided to run for a council seat. So why weren't you in school? Why did you drop out? What was the reason that
Pandemic.
you decided to stop schooling and focus on politics at the time?
Well, firstly, tertiary education is completely optional. Well, for most of the country, it's practically optional because it's very hard to get into a good college here with our education system. So whether or not I were to pursue college or my spot in the city council was a personal decision by me.
For all Filipinos,
Yes.
college is like the usual course thing you do after high school.
Yeah.
But you say that you stopped and then you ran for council. So it's not very typical, even for children of politicians, to stop school and then go on to politics. So
Well, it is. It is actually. No, it is. There are many son and daughters of politicians na hindi nakapagkolehiyo but still they run into politics. Oh. Kumbaga face value tapos backup ko tatay ko.
what was the decision? Why did you feel like you had to go work as a counselor instead of pursuing a university degree?
For the average Filipino.
Yeah, for the average Filipino.
Well, I don't believe that the average Filipino will be given an opportunity to pursue tertiary education. Plenty of them actually start going into work after high school. As
Yung mga yung mga working students, no? Hindi naman lahat tayo given yung chance na makatungtong sa kolehiyo. Yung mga iba, no, they need to work hard just to finish college, 'di ba? Kaya nga may mga iba, 'di ba? Marami akong kaklase na after school pupunta sa Jollibee or McDo, magkukrew, 'di ba? Iba't ibang mga uh, instances, may mga katrabahong ako before na nag-aaral ng nursing pero the same time nag-aano rin siya, nagko-call center. Oh. Mga may konti na lang yung subjects na hahabulin, ganun. Just to finish their studies. Oh.
for me, I had the opportunity to, but I'd rather choose to also go to work after, which is my spot in the city council.
So you felt like it was more in line with your passions to just work now.
Yes.
So basically, sir, you don't believe that you have to go through college and then work after. So the time was ripe and you felt like you had to take it. Okay.
So on the lighter side, like you are an animal welfare
Yes.
advocate. Can you share how did you develop that kind of like compassion for animals, and why do you think it's important for us to also give focus on the animal welfare?
Well, firstly, mahilig ako sa mga pusa at aso kasi cute sila, nagmamiyaw-miyaw at nag-aaw-aw. I just find them really cute, and I find animals interesting.
You are an animal advocate.
Yes.
You're right. Okay. You love cats and dogs and all other animals.
Well, not necessarily all other animals.
Okay.
There are plenty of invasive species
But when
like
did you start, sir?
lionfishes and
When did
You've always
when
had
did you
pets? Pets?
you have pets?
Growing
Or when
Since
did
I
you
was a
start,
child, I've
when did you
always
start
loved
like loving
animals.
animals, sir? Because other people, they don't like necessarily love animals, but you, sir, like when did you start?
Yeah, even when I was younger, I was very interested in nature in general.
Oh, in nature in general. Pero how did it develop na naging particularly cats and dogs?
Wala, mahilig lang ako sa mga miyaw-miyaw at awaw at sila yung laging nandoon.
How many pets do you have?
Ang dami kasi readily available yung mga aso't pusa, 'di ba? Kahit sa bakanteng lote, minsan may mga, 'di ba, may mga bagong panganak na pusa, mga ganon. Readily available 'yan, no? Ako rin naman, ganyan din naman, may ano kami, tatlo na hindi, dalawa na lang ngayon, namatay yung isa eh. 2 pusa, 2 aso, tas isda. Yan. Dito sa tabi ko may ano ako dito, may aquarium ako, tas doon sa labas. Tapos 3 tub doon sa labas, sa may harap.
Right now, and what are they?
25 plus
25.
30 cats and dogs. Unless we count like the pigeons and yung sa mga ni Kong PD. Farm.
Really? Many.
Anong tunog ng buhaya? Mahirap eh. Mahirap. Anong klaseng iba-iba kasi ang tunog ng ng buhaya eh. Ano ba 'yun? Yung mayaman ba na buhaya o yung mahirap na buhaya?
Do you advocate for animal welfare?
Yes, generally I advocate for cats and dogs. Endangered species, not yet, because I don't really know too much about them, but I'm also starting to study it right now. Well, not right now. I'm going to be starting to study it in the future if I have any proposed laws regarding those.
It seems like ang dami yung interest ngayon, sir. Like, because there's an interview I watched with you na you also plan to taking veterinary course.
Oo, nag-aampon kami ng pets. Oo. Nung nakaraan lang, may inaano sa amin eh, may binibigay. Pero umatras yung may-ari kasi nga bago namin kasi ampunin, no. Tinatry talaga naming doon sa may-ari na baka naman feeling mo lang hindi mo na kayang alagaan, di ba? Pero deep inside talagang mahal na mahal mo yung alaga mo. Kami rin ayaw rin namin ayaw rin namin na mawalay dun sa mga alaga namin. So we feel the same way. Pag ganun, talagang kinakausap namin ng masinsinan na pag hindi mo kung hindi mo kayang i-let go, wag, kasi magsisisi ka.
Tapos business something?
Yes.
Business ad or pero right now nasa politics din kayo, sir. So ano
Yes.
yung priority nyo in terms of studying?
What's my brother that's taking the business related course? As for me, my priority would be all of it. If
All
I
of
can do
it.
everything, then
You
why
can
would
do
I
it
only settle
simultaneously.
for one thing? Yes.
Tama.
Hopefully, I can do it simultaneously.
Yung tunog ng buhaya, ito. Ito yung tunog ng buhaya, ha. Oo. Malinaw na, ha. Oh. Nasagot ko na yung tunog ng buhaya.
You get a lot of praise for speaking out. A lot of Filipinos are grateful that there's a congressman speaking from the inside of Batasan who's actually speaking the language of the man.
Sa pusa, ang pinakamahilig talaga si P.A.K.U. Yun, nagdadala ng pusa. Oo. May makitang pusa sa sa parking space, no? Kukunin niya, iuuwi talaga niya. Yun si P.A.K.U, mahilig sa pusa yun.
But you also get a lot of criticisms. So you get criticisms like, I know you've heard of this, mentally crazy, too DDS, too impulsive, too reckless. Even your lack of college education, they use against you. Among all these criticisms that you've received, what hurts or what bothers you or what do you wish to correct?
Well, there's nothing that I need to correct there because people are subjected to their own interpretations. If they are to criticize me for that, then that reflects more on them than on me, since they are emotionally attached to someone that they do not know. If you were to look at the if you were to look at the perspective of, if you were to create your own perspective on a politician, then something that you must do rationally rather than emotionally. So if you were to start criticizing them, then you're already putting an emotional basis into that if you're criticizing them instead of their policies.
How are you treated inside Batasan when you arrive and when your videos go viral and you're beside all these other congressmen that sometimes you make fun of in your videos? How are you when you come in? Do you get greeted or do people steer clear of you?
Well,
We're
when I first started, I was just a normal congressman, but now the people, they're very supportive of me there. Maybe they don't want to be my next target, or maybe they see the good in my actions, but either way, my popularity has drastically increased within Congress.
When you say within Congress, your colleagues, as in your
Yes.
fellow congressmen, really? It's a surprise because I'm sure many of them are afraid of you, but also many of them are angry. So those who are angry, how do you deal with them?
No, nothing. I just smile. I say
So
hi.
they refuse to talk to you.
Yeah, they do.
So what
Mas napipikon kasi yung mga tao dyan. If they're angry tapos ngingitian mo or yung mag-hi ka sa kanila, they'll fume. mas mapipikon yung mga yan. Oh, kung marunong nga mamikon, very good yan.
what's the dynamic like inside Congress when you're there? Because you've gone against the powers that be. You have not gone against like the other regular congressmen, but the ones that are Martin Romualdez, Sandro Marcos. So what's the dynamic like inside Congress?
Well, they see that if I could destroy the reputations of the strongest congressmen, then I could easily destroy the reputations of much weaker congressmen. So
Tama.
plenty of them are either afraid or supportive. Supportive in that they see that I may be
A threat.
the hope in fixing the image of the house, because even them, they are negatively affected by that. Whenever they go out into public, or even their families, their children are being bullied in school, and they see that if I can fix the House of Representatives from within, then that might solve their problems that they're facing in private due to the response of the people to the corruption within the House of Representatives. And the others, they just don't want to be involved in the flood control anomalies, and I just involve random people. So they're just hoping that they don't become my next target.
Sir, how do you assess your behavior inside the House of Representatives? I mean, considering there's an ethics complaint against you.
Well, I'm still clear of any theft of the people's money, so that's the best part.
But how do you assess it yourself?
What do you mean?
How do you assess yourself? Do you believe you have an unruly behavior inside the House of Representatives, sir?
Well, if there is an unruly behavior, then or unruly or disruptive behavior, then that would still be good. If anything, that would be better, since if the house is stealing from the people, then disrupting that theft is an act of good.
There was
Hindi naman siya unruly actually. Okay? Like, kung unruly siya, sa lahat yan eh. Pero nakita ko yung yung video na siya ay bumoto, no, doon sa speakership ni Boji. Tapos sabi niya, I abstain. Tapos kaway, ngiti, tapos kumuha siya sa lahat, no? Like all of them are laughing, di ba? Like, dude, it is not a sign that you are unruly. More of a disruptor siguro, yun.
hearing an ethics hearing. There was a hearing in the House of Representatives about the ethics complaint against you, sir. But you were absent that time.
Yes.
You said because you played video games the night prior.
Yes.
But sir, isn't it the time? Why didn't you make sure that you would attend? You would be able to attend that hearing for you to be able to defend your name or like explain your side why you were acting that way, or like, you know, regarding to the complaint against you.
Oh, I did make sure. I was just I did make sure I was just too immersed in my games.
But isn't it part of like you as a congressman, you should do like due diligence, or like you should make sure that you would attend to your responsibilities, attending the hearings.
At saka, I don't know if they're taking it too seriously, this video game issue. Buong magdamag nandun siya sa labas eh. They're rallying all throughout the night, no? Tapos video game, ewan ko. They got swept away, no? Dun sa statement niya na I was too busy playing video games.
Well, I mean, if you look at the congressmen now, everyone's just practically stealing as much as they want. So what due diligence can we expect from the House of Representatives? It is an establishment which no one has any expectations from. A congressman could steal 100 billion pesos now, and the average person would just think that's normal. There won't be any significant outrage because that's already what we are accustomed to.
Tama.
But as a neophyte lawmaker, sir, as a new generation right now, isn't it time for us to like introduce a new behavior, a more ideal behavior for a congressman? Do you believe in that, sir?
A new
Like,
ideal
since
behavior.
you belong now to the new generation of congressman, you belong to the younger generation. Isn't it time for us to show to the Filipino people that we should be tayo yung magiging model?
Eto, tanong ni Jojo Cam lately, si BBM ba kayang sumagot ng ganyan? Doon pa nga lang sa interview nung nakaraan, yung sa media briefing, puro may delay lagi eh.
Ng isang tamang congressman.
Yeah, but if you also look at the new generation in Congress, it's not just me. There are plenty of very corrupt people in the new generation. There are people like, what's that? Andrew Romualdez, Martin Romualdez' son, who is...
Nako.
very silent on his father's issue. He has not made any statements regarding that, and he's been very quiet. So, directly assuming that just because a new congressman like me is in Congress doesn't necessarily mean that there are no more horrible people there. I mean, if anything, the next generation of thieves are already there. Martin Romualdez has two families
Ala. Ala, new generation of thieves. New generation ng magnanakaw. Anak ni Martin. Naku, yari.
next generation of thieves are already there. Martin Romualdez has two family members within Congress already, his wife and his son. So it's very idealistic to assume that there would be changes because I'm there, when there are plenty of people in the same when there are people in the same generation as me that are the opposite of me there also.
So do you feel like it's an uphill climb for you while you're there in Congress? When you look at your colleagues, you're saying that hindi lang dahil nandyan ka that things will change. So how do you see your role in Congress? If you think that by you being there is not enough to change Congress, what role do you see yourself in? Like how is your outspokenness going to change things?
Well, whether or not it changes things, I would still find some form of success either way. Because firstly, if it were to change, then that would be good for the Filipino people. But if it were not to change and the corruption becomes worse, then it will show what kind of people are within Congress itself. It will increase the people's anger. We can build a society that's openly hostile to politicians. And that in and of itself is also a victory. Imagine their children being ostracized in school. Imagine their families being ashamed to go out in public. That is a good step for society. If we are to create a Philippine society which is openly against not just corrupt politicians, but also their families, their children's, something that's openly hostile to evil.
So you're saying you have nothing to lose by doing this?
Of course.
Because if it doesn't change anything, at least people will see the congressman for who they really are. And if you being very passionate about this, being very aggressive about this, changes things, then you're still this is still going to be a win for you. This is what you're saying. So you have nothing to lose by being very outspoken and aggressive.
Well, yes, I wouldn't have done this if there was any possibility of defeat.
Tama.
So, what is your aspiration for the House of Representatives? And what are we doing para ma-make sure that that aspiration will come true? For the House of the House now, sir.
As I previously stated, whether or not it comes through is something that's beneficial for me. If my aspirations were to succeed, then we'll build a better society. If my aspirations were to fail, then we will see what problems we have within our society and who are the ones causing it. So ultimately, if anything, it would be more beneficial for me if I were to fail, because that will prove to people how corrupt Congress really is. It will increase the people's hatred towards the members of Congress, and not just them, also their families.
So willing siyang maging sacrificial lamb, no? Just for the Filipino people to open their eyes, no? Maging eye opener siya. Willing siyang oh sige, gawin niyo na lang sa akin 'to. And I hope na makita ng taong bayan, tapos sila nang bahala sa inyo.
And that is part of a society which I want to build, a society that openly hates evil, that will openly take part in the destruction of evil. As we can already see with the whole Nepo babies issues, it's not just the politicians that are being attacked now. It's also their families, also their children. And I think that's a very good step, because that's where they're vulnerable. That's where their weaknesses lie, in their families. So if we can keep that up, if we can increase the hostility towards their families, if we can ostracize and isolate their kids in school, if we could keep their relatives at home afraid to go out in public, then that's a very good society that we're building.
But for the House of Representatives in particular, sir, like a House of Representatives without allegedly corrupt lawmakers or corrupt members, what's your aspiration for the House, for the body?
Well, to remove all to remove corrupt members there, you'd have to remove over 100 congressmen. How can you do that without a revolutionary government, which can only happen through people power? The problem is all we've had are peaceful revolutions. You can't really make change without making a drastic statement. And I believe eventually we'll reach a point where a violent revolution would become the only necessary step towards fixing our country.
Is that what you're doing right now, sir?
But as much as possible, we don't want that to happen. Kasi like Nepal, no? If you see Nepal right now, kawawa yung ekonomiya ng Nepal ngayon. We don't want that to happen in the Philippines. Kasi pag nangyari yon, kawawa ang ating mga pamilya. Tayo rin yung kawawa. So as much as possible, kung kaya nating tanggalin, no, in a peaceful manner, why not? 'Di ba? Pero syempre, 'di ba? Yung violence na yan, it always comes yung pinaka dulo na option na meron ka. Kumbaga, nagawa mo na ang lahat-lahat, it all failed. No? Doon lang siguro. Pero as much as possible, don't use it.
Speaking out against the government.
Well, it's not just what I'm doing, everyone's doing it. But for me, we try to keep things as peaceful as possible, but we can no longer stop the anger of the people, and people will become more and more angry the longer this goes on.
You do not agree in a peaceful revolution?
No, what I've stated is that
There's no such thing as peaceful revolution. Ano ka ba? You're revolting eh. And the government, no? Even yung sinasabi nating EDSA, 'di ba? Rally, it was never peaceful. 'Di ba? Yung 100% peaceful, walang ganun.
I do want to keep things as peaceful as possible, but when violence becomes necessary, then I will be unable to stop it no matter how hard I try. And I'm not necessarily open to that, but I would rather prefer not for it not to be violent, but we cannot stop if it reaches that point. We're not the ones deciding anymore. It's the people that have been stolen from. That's who would be deciding. And once we face economic collapse, once we face a point where mere imprisonment of corrupt officials would not be able to save the reputation of the government, then the only resulting action from that would be either a war, would be either a civil war or a violent revolution against the government.
Sa Congress, sir, there are significant bills ba that you already filed?
Yes, the VAT abolition bill, pero ayaw nilang mawalan ng VAT kasi it's a very big source of income.
But why did you propose it, sir? Why did you propose the abolition of VAT?
Well, actually, I made a whole speech about that, but the primary reason is that yung VAT kasi, it affects everyone, no matter.
Hindi lang yan, guys. Hindi lang yung VAT. Okay? Wait lang. Pakita ko sa inyo, ha? Hindi lang yung VAT, yung ayaw nila matanggal. No? Even this. Alam nyo naman, dito sa natin, sa community natin, we don't like online gambling. Ito ha, recto firmly against online gambling ban. So tuloy-tuloy pa rin, no, ang online gambling, no, sa Pilipinas, at hahayaan na lang natin na malulong, no, kagaya ni nung mga lulong diyan sa gobyerno, no, malulong sa sugal yung mga kababayan natin, no, kasi nga ito nakakapag-generate daw ng malaking halaga, no, para sa gobyerno. That's why the recto, no, recto doesn't want online gambling to be banned.
Your status. So for example, ikaw pag may property tax ka, they cannot tax you on property without you first possessing property, which is an indicator of wealth. For your income tax, they cannot tax you for income without first having a regular source of income, which is also an indicator of financial stability. Yung problema naman sa VAT, kahit even if you're just a kid buying at the convenience store, you're also subjected to value-added taxation.
Mhm.
Practically everyone is subjected to that. And yun yung pinaka malala doon. And it's the first thing that they increase, which is
Pero saan tayo
horrible.
kukuha ng funds, sir, kung nawala ng VAT?
What do you mean, saan tayo? We don't need to get more funds. We just need to stop stealing money. VAT only accounts for, as per the 2024 collection of the BIR, 800, mga 800 billion lang yun, di ba? But how much the politicians steal? 1 to 2 trillion. 800 billion is is less than 2 trillion. You can have 0% VAT. If politicians stole nothing, you can have 0% VAT and still have 1.2 trillion extra. And the biggest problem here is that a politician can, a member of the House of Representatives can steal 0 pesos and still be part of the top 1% just based on their income alone, since since average congressman makes a salary of around 300,000 per month. That's
So-
already
'Di ba? Ang VAT kasi lahat nagbabayad, sabi rito. So kahit na hindi kahit na hindi alisin, bawasan. 'Di ba? Kasi isa tayo sa pinaka heavily taxed, no? The Filipino people, no? Siguro top 1 tayo sa Asia sa heavily taxed.
puts you in the top 1% income class of the Philippines.
So apparently, sir, you have strong conviction in abolishing VAT. Then why don't you like pursue it? The
I already
Congress.
pursued it. I filed a bill.
You will fight for it.
Yes, I already filed a bill regarding that.
Sir, in the previous Congress, lawmakers were eyeing to pass a measure regulating social media, defining fake news and imposing penalty on it. For those spreading it, do you support that?
Fake news. Well, that really depends on what they define as fake news, because the problem is when the state starts to define fake news, then it can also define dissent as fake news.
Tama.
So what type of support would that garner? Who determines whether or not something is fake news? Because if you were to look at the official statements that there were no incriminating evidence in the DPWH fire in QC, if you're to state that there are incriminating evidence, that would be fake news. So what are we going to assume? That there was nothing, that the fire there was purely coincidental? That would be the problem. Once you allow the state to determine whether or not something is fake news, then you also allow them to determine what the narrative is. You allow them to destroy evidence regarding corruption.
But my question, sir, is would you support the move of the House to come up with a measure that will define fake news, that will penalize fake news, that will regulate social media?
Yeah, exactly as I previously stated.
Kailang NEP yan, Jornex. Sabi rito, teach my budget pala nilagay sa NEP na 700M sa Dolomite Beach na hindi natin alam. Nakita ko sa topic ng isang vlogger, source isang kong na party list din, sabi rito. Ang Denmark, sabi rito, 25% ang VAT nila. Germany is 19%. Kaya lang, sa Pilipinas, ang daming pobre sa pinaka-pobre.
It is determined by what would be within that law. And as far as I'm concerned, I am not in favor of regulation of social media, because it's not something that they can regulate. It's not something that our government is capable of regulating with the technological expertise we have now. We have plenty of official government accounts being hacked and posting nagpo-post na na-hack sila, tapos nagpo-post na ng mga bold, naglilink sa mga scam sites. When you have those types of people in our government, how can you expect them to be able to regulate something like social media?
Would you support any congressional move to come up with a measure that would define fake news and penalize it?
Yeah, firstly, it depends on what their definition of fake news and penalizing it, and what penalties they would make for it. So it's very hard to make an official stance on this, because while we can be against fake news, we also have to determine what fake news is. And in a hypothetical bill that is not stated on what the definition would be, it's very hard to say whether or not I would be in favor of it.
Sir, may sinabi kayo na you were calling for the abolition of the Philippine Coast Guard.
Yes.
Kasi nakikisali sila sa affairs ng alleged China and Taiwan. Sir, why did you say that? Why did you call for the abolition of the Philippine Coast Guard?
Well, firstly, the China and Taiwan affair is not something that we have any active part. And if anything, the Philippines officially recognizes Taiwan as part of China. We have an official stance of a one China policy. And it's not just us. Also, the United States has the official stance of one China policy. It's not something that we have any economic or political diplomatic interest in. So we have to keep ourselves as far away from that as possible. The PCG are very interested in that. I don't know why, but they should also not meddle in that, as it can only serve as a detriment to the Filipino people.
But to the extent, sir, of abolishing them.
Yes.
Considering that they're the front line of our fight over sovereignty in the West Philippine Sea.
Yes, but like, are they winning? If they're at the front line of our fight and all they're bringing back are injured crew members and getting attacked by water cannons, then why do we keep them? What do we gain from that other than international embarrassment? Vietnam and China have powerful water cannons. Why can't we do the same? Unless it's either there's a lack of funding for the PCG, which we can see is clearly not true, or there are thieves within the PCG.
Alam nyo kasi, yung Philippine Coast Guard yan, puro lang coast, wala namang guard. Kayo naman. Tignan nyo, Philippine Coast Guard ka tapos, di ba, ikaw yung ginagwardya ha. Ikaw dapat yung nagagwardya. Ikaw yung pinapaalis. Di ba? Oh.
Which is a very big possibility, is with all other agencies in our government.
Sir, you have also made some comments regarding the West Philippine Sea. Sir, I want to know from a congressman's perspective, what do you think should our government do to strengthen our sovereignty over the West Philippine Sea? I mean, especially in the international arena, like following our, ASEAN chairmanship.
Well, firstly, protecting our territorial waters is only good when it's successful. We can't just keep sending PCG vessels there, having them run away once they get water cannon. That's not really, there's no strategic point in that. And if anything, it's just endangering the lives of our Filipino citizens. So what we are doing now is definitely wrong. As for what we can do, it's something that still must be deliberated in Congress. It's not something I could just blindly state without knowing, without considering the options we can make. I just know that the option that we are currently doing now is wrong. And I think we can all agree that the PCG is not winning against China, and even if it's just battles using water cannons.
Sir, if I remember it correctly, you cited Vietnam's water cannon. Tama po ba? So, do you support that the PCG would also have or do that?
Water cannons?
Yes, sir. Tama po ba na?
Oo naman, pag binomba ka, bombahin mo rin. Kailangan mong, kumbaga ano yan sa San Juan, piyesta ng San Juan. Oh. Pag binasa ka, basahin mo rin. Ano ba naman? Sabi mo, pag tinanong ka, bakit mo binomba ng tubig? Self-defense. Oh. Alangan namang binobomba mo ko ng tubig, ako aaray lang ako. Oh. Iyak na lang ako kasi nabasa ako. Diba?
Tama ba pagkaalala ko? About Vietnam. You cited
Yes.
kasi Vietnam's stand, yung response ng Vietnam sa China. So would you support like gawin ng Philippine Coast Guard?
It's not just, I believe Vietnam's also using the water cannons against us, right?
I'll check on that, sir.
Yes. Well, I'll check on that too. But firstly, the military, and PCG is not a branch of the military, but in all forms of diplomacy, I believe we should have an equal stance and we should retaliate in the same manner that we are attacked. So if they use water cannons against us, we must use water cannons against them. The problem involving the PCG is that they are going there without water cannons while they expect their opponents to have water cannons. It's just creating an internationally embarrassing situation because it just portrays the PCG as incompetent. If we have if the front line for the defense of our territorial waters is incompetent, then how does that reflect to the rest of the country? And as you can see with the state the economy is in, with the state of investor confidence within our country, especially in corruption, it's just showing that the corruption does not just extend to our government, but also to the branches of our military and to the outside, and to what we show on the outside.
Lahat
What
na.
we use to defend our territorial waters is also a victim of corruption If they can afford water cannons while we can't, then it just shows the difference in our governments. And that's the first thing we show to the international community, how we defend our territorial waters. And they are drastically failing in that.
So
Agree.
apparently you want a stronger response of the government over yung mga incidents sa West Philippine Sea.
No, it's not a stronger response. It's an equal response.
Equal response.
What you do when someone is armed, if you are expecting armed resistance, then you myself must be armed. You cannot just go there expecting to be water cannoned without bringing water cannons in return.
Tama.
So sir, if you call for the abolishment of PCG, sino na lang ang papalit sa atin sa frontline ng pag-defend natin sa West Philippine Sea?
We will first abandon that area until we fixed our local economy, because we cannot wage a war without first fixing our economy. And we cannot escalate conflicts without fixing our economy. That's what you saw with the USSR back when the Soviet Union collapsed. If you were to keep an unsustainable military arms race without fixing your local economy, then you will inevitably collapse. And that is something that must be considered by our national government. You can't just keep escalating tensions with China, because China can keep up the fight. We cannot. And the more we allocate resources to that specific area in the West Philippine Sea, the more we're losing in the areas that we have here. The more we will lose territory here, because losing territory is not just to other countries, but also losing economic gains. That's also a form of loss for our country. And whether or not, in a small country with smaller territory can make massive economic gains, while larger countries can take large economic losses.
Do you still live at home? You still live at home with your mother?
Not with my mother, but I still live at my home.
Okay, with your you
With
know
my
why,
cats.
you know why I'm asking? Because you've made very powerful enemies, and I can imagine.
Kasi yung nanay niya dawit din. Usapang pamilya yan natin. Yung nanay kasi niya, di ba, siding with Puno.
Well, it all started when there was an issue with Congressman Puno, chairman of the
Puno.
If I wanted to destroy Romualdez, if they truly accused me of doing so. And so I removed Martin Romualdez to prove my point. After Romualdez was removed, all that's left was to remove Chairman Puno. But then Marcos and Romualdez are becoming hindrances to that issue. So now I have to remove President Marcos and Romualdez from Congress first.
Kasi nga, they are using Puno. Punong magikero nga tawag dyan, di ba? They are using Puno to fix this issue. Okay? Kaya siya nandyan. They know that people doesn't trust Martin Romualdez anymore. That's why they have Puno, no? Nagbibida-bida si Puno, showing the public na I'm here to fix this mess, kesyo ganito, kesyo ganyan.
But you did not. You were not collecting signatures.
Yeah, I was not.
You were not. But if you would want him to remove, that's what you're gonna do.
No, I told him that because the problem here is that collecting signatures from the sidelines or behind people's backs, that's a move for cowards. If I wanted to destroy Romualdez and remove him from the speakership, then I would do it in a more open and aggressive way, which is what I've done and how I succeeded. Hamyaw.
As a government, you were an ally of the government. You were BBM Sara.
Yes.
What was the one issue that made you turn? That made you say, okay, I'm withdrawing support? Because I'm sure there have been other issues, but the one issue that you couldn't turn a blind eye to, what was the one thing that bothered you enough to come out and, speak out?
The betrayal by Chairman Puno. Since that's where it all started. Until then, I was completely fine with being silent, both for the safety of myself, my family, and my political interests. But when you treat an ally and someone who has been a loyal supporter of the party like that, then that's a very That's very insulting considering all I've done for the NUP. And so now I am bringing about its destruction to show that that's not something that you could just do.
But the reason he thought that you were planning on overthrowing Romualdez was because you were already very outspoken about the issues.
No, it was not outspoken at the time. During the time when he stated that, I was still within the NUP and part of the majority, part of the Rules Committee.
So what made him think that you were planning on replacing?
I gave him advice that if support of Romualdez were to keep damaging his reputation, it would be better for him to just remove himself from the deputy speakership and instead focus more on the party,
Yes, secret.
or instead focus more on himself. And he saw that as an insult to, he saw that as me declaring open opposition against Romualdez, when in reality it was not.
Sir, sorry, let me clarify. What was the betrayal of Chairman Puno that you were referring to?
About po na yun eh. But anyway, no? Mahaba-haba pa. Nag-start na rin si Atty. Libayan eh. Well, tapusin na muna natin dyan guys. No? Kasi pa-start na rin ang live na Atty. Libayan. Continue na lang natin to the next time. Okay, so maraming salamat sa panonood. Bukas walang pasok, no? Doon sa mga dadaanan ng bagyo, ingat-ingat po tayo, no? Pack your things, 'di ba? Yung medical kit ninyo, no? Supply kit ninyo, tubig, magtabi na rin kayo ng tubig, battery, flashlight, no? I-charge nyo na yung mga power banks ninyo. And I hope everyone will be safe. So ngayon nagla-landfall na, no? Yung bagyo, no? Hopefully, no, walang masaktan. Lahat kayo maging safe, no? And then pray, no? Pray guys. So, yun lamang guys. Kumain ng tama sa oras and see you sa live na Atty. Libayan. This is Teacher Mark out. Bye-bye guys.
Sa simula pa man, problema'y tila walang hanggan. Mga leader sa upuan, ang matay sa sarili lang.